Hello there! If we make a YouTube search for white balance in Photoshop, these videos are the top rankings, the most viewed, the ones that you should be able to rely on. They have that in common that they all use the same method to determine where the most neutral color is, the one closest to gray, and then use that specific color to white balance the whole image. But the assumption that you can correct the colors from the most neutral in the image is unfortunately wrong. Even though all my favorite YouTubers use this method, it's still not correct. The most neutral color in the image is not the same as the most neutral color in that part of the real world that the image is depicting. Let me explain. Let's start by repeating this commonly accepted method on this pale and reddish image that I used in my How to Regain Color and Contrast tutorial not so long ago. First, we have to add a middle gray layer that we can make in many different ways. I just use Command-Shift-N, choose Overlay Blending Mode to get the option to tick 50% middle gray, and go back to normal blending mode for a second so we can see that it's actually gray. Then we choose Difference Blending Mode, a blending mode that will show all similarities in black. If we jump to this image here, I can explain how it works. Press Command J to duplicate the layer and make an alteration in one of the layers. A dot, for example, and then choose Difference Blending Mode. Only the dot is visible and the rest is black. If we move one of the layers a little, we get visible details all over the image because they are not aligned anymore. And aligning images by hand is precisely the most common use of this blending mode. For instance, I use it all the time to align stacked astrophotos where the content sometimes is too faint for auto alignment. Well, back to our image. We have to find the color closest to middle gray. That means the darkest color when we use Difference Blending Mode, and a threshold adjustment layer with a low amount in levels will show us exactly where the most neutral color is. We have to remember that area. We can use a color sampler marker, or we can just make a new layer and draw around the area. Then we turn off the gray and the threshold layer, and with the curves or levels adjustment layer, we can use the middle eyedropper to correct the image. The problem is we didn't get balanced colors, only a strong yellow tint, and even if we remove the pale look, it's still too yellow. But the area in the painting behind the boy that appeared neutral when the colors were not red is now perfectly gray. If we want balanced colors in this particular image, we have to click on the white wall under the blue painting. But I only know this because it's my own home and I know the wall is neutral white. Let me explain in detail why this correction went wrong and why this method is not much better than just eyeballing it. I took this photo of me in my studio holding a Greycard, and on the allo stand I have taped a piece of CTB gel to have some blue in the shot. To those of you that are not familiar with CTB filters, it's a classical filter for converting incandescent or tungsten light to daylight. And if you want to convert daylight into incandescent, you want a CTO, color temperature orange. Well, let's bring the photo into Photoshop. It's a raw photo and the raw converter is now open. Normally, if you have a Greycard, you would use this to make a perfect white balance. But we want a bad white balance we can correct. So we click on the blue CTB gel and open the photo. Let's try the same procedure as before on this much too warm image. Add a gray layer. This time I simply add a new layer with Command-Shift-N and then Shift Backspace to get the option to fill it with gray. Difference Blending Mode and a threshold layer. And we can see that the blue gel is the most neutral color in the image because all the yellow is compensating for the blue and making it the most middle gray in the image. If we place a gray reference box in the image, it's easy to see. If we recap what we just did, we gave the image a wrong, very warm white balance, close to what would have happened if we accidentally had our camera set to daylight white balance, but used it in a tungsten environment. Then we used the most neutral color in the image to white balance. In this case, the blue gel, and the colors are of course way off. Unfortunately, there are no easy fix, as they claim in one of the top ranking videos. In this image, only the Greycard can fix the white balance. I'm curious whether some of you have tried this commonly accepted method, and did you have any luck with it? Please let me know in the comments below. But do we always need a Greycard when we want perfect white balance? Or are there no other useful method? Well, maybe the question should be, do I need perfect white balance all the time? Or when does it really matter, and when is it actually ruining our photos? Yes, it can ruin our photos, I will get to that soon. But first we have to distinguish between local white balance and global white balance. Local white balance is very important when you take photos of objects with not too big spatial dimensions, where the local color is important. Let's imagine you have an online t-shirt shop and take all your photos yourself without any reference Greycard that can keep your colors consistent. The result is that your colors might differ from the actual color, and you end up with a lot of angry customers because they didn't get t-shirts in the colors that they expected. In that case, a Greycard is essential. If you take photos of paintings and fine art, the demand for precise colors are even higher. Luckily, we have tools more accurate than a normal Greycard. I will get into details about this subject in my white balance part 2 tutorial coming up really soon. So please ring that bell if you want to be notified. When it comes to global white balance, we don't always need the same precision and accuracy. A Greycard can actually ruin a perfectly good photo. Here we have 3 photos taken in the late afternoon, in the so-called golden hour. And as you can see up here, the white balance is as shot. The 2 first images contains a Greycard, so we easily can make a perfect white balance. They are, by the way, all taken in the same time and place, within a few seconds. If we start by synchronizing the sunlit Greycard and our main photo, and white balance, we get very cool colors, and the charming warm light is gone, no atmosphere left, certainly not better than the original white balance. Now let's process for the Greycard in the shadow, white balance, and we have a very warm photo with no complementary interactions and a dull, washed out sky. Definitely not better. The auto white balance in the camera is doing a better job than the 2 extreme white balances we can choose from here. So when we use a white balance card, we should be very careful where we place it, or maybe ask ourselves, do we need it at all? Our eyes, or maybe I should say our brain, has actually a built-in white balance tool that can compensate when the colors are a little off, as long as we have a whole scene to adjust from. But does this mean we are totally lost and only can rely on what we think and personal preferences? Well, luckily we still have a few options to balance an image. Let's go back to the pale red photo of the boy and open our histogram. And in channel settings, we choose color. Now we have a visual representation of the pixel distribution in the image, and it's clear to see the overrepresentation of red. Let's expand even more by selecting all channels view. Besides a distribution centered around the middle, typical for a hazy image, the red is more to the right hand side. That means more bright, more red. If we add a levels adjustment layer, we can push the RGB colors for better alignment. And we will probably end up with a rather good white balance. Like that. Yes, it's actually okay. If we have a raw image, this type of adjustment is even easier. Here we already have colors in the histogram, and we can adjust with the temperature and tint slider. A simplified explanation of these 2 sliders is the temperature is from daylight to tungsten, and tint is for fluorescent light types. But in most scenes, we use them both. As you probably already know from my previous tutorials, we can use the white balance picker tool as well. So this is more to give you a basic knowledge about how to work with histograms. That was one option. Another option is simply to press the auto button in the levels or curves adjustment layer. And if we go to the flyout menu and select auto options, we have 4 different algorithms to choose from. The enhance per channel contrast or find dark and light colors are our best options in this case. Well, this tutorial was mainly about white balancing without a Greycard. In my next episode about white balancing, part 2, I will talk about the many different tools you have to achieve a perfect exposure and a white balance in demanding situations, or if you work with 2 different cameras. So please stay tuned on the channel. Thank you and goodbye. Well, you could of course continue watching.